Tonight, Superboy gets a brand new writer, and he might just be able to break the curse of Superboy being nothing but tie-in fodder. Batgirl fights against the DC Universe's equivalent of the Bye-Bye Man, and Batman Eternal starts off its epic story with the most dangerous DC villain of all, Professor Pig. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 136 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and it's a super short episode. At least I assume so. I mean, I haven't actually checked how long this episode is, considering I need to record this part to know how long the episode will be, but it feels like it's a shorter episode because DC only put out 8 comics this week. That's right, 8 comics. Why? I don't know. I have genuinely no idea. I think it was just because DC managed to plan up to Forever Evil, and now that they are finished with it, one more issue, but they're basically done with it, they said, well, there goes our 2.5-year plan. What do we do now? And they just canceled a bunch of books and didn't even think about it. So this week was left a little bit in the lurch there. I will go ahead and tell you what few books we do have coming out this week in no particular order. We have Batgirl, Superboy, Superman/Wonder Woman, Green Lantern Corps, Justice League 3000, World's Finest, Constantine, and brand new number 1, starting a new era here post Forever Evil, and that is Batman Eternal. For those of you who don't know, Batman Eternal is a weekly comic, which means that every week, for the next 52 weeks, I will be talking about Batman Eternal. Now, here's the question to you, and I am going to actually ask you for an answer. I want some audience engagement on this. I don't know where in the episode to put the weeklies. I can either keep them spread throughout, have them show up with the rest of the family books. I can put them all in the middle to give a little break up to the episode, or I can save them for the end of the episode. Mind you, by the time that we hit about 6 months from now, we are going to have 3 weeklies all running concurrently. So keep that in mind as you answer. But yeah, go ahead and tell me what you would like to see in the comments wherever it is you're watching this. Preferably YouTube, because I don't really check anywhere else. So yeah, all that's coming up on this week's episode. I think I have vamped enough to justify a little bit of this runtime, so let's go ahead and jump into what I'm putting at the start of the episode for this episode and this episode only, Batman Eternal. Batman Eternal number 1, written by Snyder, Tynion, Seeley, Fawkes, and Layman. And this issue's art is by Jason Fabok. This is the beginning of a weekly miniseries where, hey, Scott Snyder's Batman is doing a whole flashback thing. Let's see what's going on in the modern day. So we pick up at the end of the story, and we show Gotham is burning to the ground. Bruce Wayne has a bat symbol carved into his chest. He's bruised, beaten, and tied up to the bat signal. And a voice is saying, I did all this. I have killed everyone you care about, set fire to your city, and I've beaten you. So now watch as I take away everything. But then we cut back to now, and we see Gotham, and we have someone talking on the phone that we are unaware of who they are yet. And they're saying yeah, Gotham everyone thinks is so super dark and grimy all the time. But there are lights everywhere. That's the thing that gets you. When the nighttime comes, all the lights come on. This place is blinding. And we see this guy is getting off the train, and his name is Jason Bard. And turns out he's a cop. He's being brought in from Detroit. He wanted to get transitioned over to Gotham in order to do some good. And we see Harvey Bullock is meeting up with him. And he's like, hey, you're Jason Bard. Commissioner Gordon, he is all in on you. You are the super wonderkind that he is just absolutely adoring. And Jason's like, cool. When do I get to meet him? And he's like, he's a little bit busy right now. So we then cut over to somewhere, I think it's a museum of aeronautics or something, where Gordon is pinned down behind a downed airplane with a bunch of kids, and Professor Pig is shooting at them, and he's doing his whole Professor Pig routine. He's trying to transform these kids into Dolatrons. And Gordon keeps on calling out, like, where are you, man? And the voice over the comm, who's definitely Batman, is basically just saying, like, sorry, it's taking me a bit longer than usual. You just need to stall. So Professor Pig comes in on a biplane, starts shooting down at him. And as he starts coming back around, he's like, all right, I'm out of time. I need you here now. And he's like, sorry, the serum was burning through my suit. Luckily, I had a spare. And then coming in wearing like the Hellbat armor, Batman just crashes in through a window and just straight up meteor smashes Pig down to the ground. So Pig, he launches a secret weapon, a whole bunch of pig robots with Gatling guns in them, and Batman just straight up kicks them to pieces and doesn't let them attack anyone. So Batman gets out of the armor. He goes over to Gordon. He's like, hey, the kid's cool? And he's like, yeah, they were dosed with something, but they're fine. And Batman's like, all right, well, how about you, Commissioner? And he's like, you're not going to get me down that easy. So they start giving chase after Pig and his henchmen. There are two corridors. Pig and one of his henchmen go down the left, and a different one goes down the right. Batman says, I got Pig, you get the straggler, and they start going down their ways. And we see the straggler he runs out of this museum, he goes down to a subway station. Gordon calls it in over the comm. He's like, I need all the subway traffic at this station stopped. I need everything shut down. And we see the pair of them running down some subway lines. So meanwhile, Batman's already got Pig tied up, and he's like, Pig, and usually I could crack a little pun right now about like hog tying you, but you just dosed some kids, so I think I'm just gonna beat the crap out of you. And then Alfred comes on the comms and he's like, hey, Batman, you better get down to where Jim Gordon is. He's down on the tracks, and there are trains coming at full speed in both directions. So at this point, we cut over to the police precinct where we have, what's her name? Major Forbes. I say her, it's a him. He's a dick. And he's basically telling Jason as he gets there, he's like, hey, you're the new guy. I remember when I was a new guy, my partner, like, faked a robbery. He told me that this random lady passing by was a robber, so I almost beat the crap out of her before he's like, I'm just joking. So that was fun. And he's like, yeah, totally. You seem psychotic. And he's like, well, you're going to find out that Gordon's not the person you should be aspiring to be. He's going to end up losing this city sooner or later. You got to pick a side, and I hope you're on the right side. So at that point, Maggie Sawyer walks in, just like, don't listen to him. He's a dick. We got a whole Professor Pig thing going down. Sounds like costume stuff. And since you're the new guy, you get to make the arrest. So we head back to the subway station. We see Gordon is right next to a transformer, like an electrical transformer, and this guy is standing there. He's got a gun in his hand, and he's like, drop the gun or I will shoot. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? And Gordon's like, I swear to you, man, drop the gun. And he's like, but I'm not holding on. And he goes, 1, 2, and the guy's freaking out. And then Gordon takes the shot, and the bullet passes right through the guy's gun and ends up hitting the electrical transformer behind him. And Gordon's like, what? So all of a sudden, the transformer explodes, straight up kills this guy. Batman runs down the thing. He hears the explosion. He's yelling at Alfred, like, shut it all down. I don't care how many city blocks will lose power. Everything needs to stop now. And Alfred's like, it's not responding. I can't do anything. So Gordon sees the two trains coming at each other from either side. They both are saying they can't switch tracks. They can't slow down. Everything is locked in place. And Gordon's just going, no, 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 no. So Batman, seeing the situation, he comes in. He gets Gordon off the tracks. Gordon's yelling, no, you got to stop the trains. But at this point, all the cops come down into the subway station. They are told by Batman, everyone get down. And before anything can be done, the trains collide, and seemingly everyone inside is killed. So at that point, Gordon just kind of breaks for a little bit. He's like, I was trying to disarm him. He had a gun. And Batman's like, dude, I was patching the security footage. He didn't have a gun. And he's like, no, I saw him. He had a gun. And that transformer, it should have been shut off. It shouldn't have exploded. It definitely shouldn't have exploded like that. None of this is making any sense. You got to. And Batman's like, Jim, hey, the cops are coming. I'm just like, you got to be aware of that. And he's like, oh yeah, this is where you disappear, right? And he's like, no, I can stay if you want. This is crazy. And Jim's like, no, go take care of people. I'll face up to this. So Harvey Bullock comes in and he's like, Jesus, what happened here? And he's like, I was trying to apprehend a subject. Bullet missed. It hit an electrical transformer. We got to help these people. And then Major Forbes comes in. He's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Did you just say that you shot the bullet that caused all of this carnage? And Jim's like, I mean, maybe, I guess, but like, that's not the important thing right now. And Sawyer's backing him up, just like, dude, seriously, there are people who are injured. And Forbes is like, no. He always gets off the hook with this stuff. I want him dead to right. Bard, get in here. You're the newbie. We already said you're making the arrest. Arrest Jim Gordon. And Bard's like, I'm sorry, what? You want me to, huh? And Jim's like, no, okay, look, as long as it's going to end up, like, you guys are going to focus on helping these guys, fine, whatever, book me. But he looks at Bart and he's like, hey, you know, I brought you in here. I know you're a good cop. Stay a good cop. Like, you remember what I told you. Don't ever forget that. And Bart's like, yeah, no, totally, absolutely. So he reads Jim his rights, saying, you know, you have a right to remain silent, blah, blah, blah. And the cops start talking to each other, and they're just like, geez, man, can you believe it? Jim Gordon caused this whole thing. Isn't that crazy? And they're like, yeah, well, you know, he's only human. Not everybody can be Batman. And then we get one more panel from the end where Batman's blood is going over his eyes, and it says, oh, can't you see it, Bruce? Can't you see the grand design of it all? It's a big start. It's a very big start. It's quite big, possibly one of the biggest starts. Yeah, no, here's the thing. I read this entire series probably, 7, 8 years ago, give or take. It's been a long time. I don't remember all the twists and turns it takes, but I do remember that it felt really, really good in the beginning. I remember that these issues, it felt like there was a big plan going on. They were going to work their way through. And this was my first experience with a weekly as well. So, yeah, I'm psyched to come back to this. I'm psyched to review it through here, see the stuff that I forgot about. The only thing that's concerning is, of course, it's a weekly. So storytelling has to pretty much stay at a high at all times, or else it's very quickly going to fall into the ugh, this again sort of category. But I'm hopeful. I'm at least very hopeful from what I remember that this is going to stay up there. So overall, I'm going to give this first issue, I'm going to give it an 8.5. It does the right amount of like bringing you in. It keeps the story tight. It doesn't do anything that's completely extraneous. It feels like a great opening to a story, and I hope that we can keep that pace up for the next 52 weeks. Superman Wonder Woman number 7, written by Charles Soule, art by Paulo, Siqueira, Eddy Barrows, and Barry Kitson. So this is a prologue to Superman Doomed, and it's also kind of a massive time skip in a way, but we'll get to that. So we cut to now in London. If you remember last issue, in order to defeat the Phantom Zone portal opened by Zod and Fiora, they just activated a nuke, and they were in the middle of it. So we cut to now. They're fine. It's all cool. They're in London. They're flying together, and they're like, oh, God, it feels like forever, right? Totally. So then we cut back to then, and we show that Superman wrapped up Wonder Woman inside of his cape. He is looking not good, and Wonder Woman is unconscious. Then all of a sudden she comes to, takes a deep breath, she sits up, looks at Clark, and she's like, oh my God, Clark, you okay? You okay, man? So she starts like shaking him. He's unresponsive. She looks up at the sky, sees it's completely overcast, so she crawls out of the crater and makes her way over to a downed fighter jet that's there, and she presses a button in it which launches a either missile or laser or something up at the sky enough to make a hole in the clouds that lets just a tiny bit of sunlight in to give Clark just a little bit of a charge. And Diana falls down, she stumbles, she's clearly not okay either. So that's enough for Superman to at least come to. But then all of a sudden, 3 random soldiers appear, and they look like ghosts. And they just blast Diana away, just straight across this crater. Superman sits up. He's like, what the heck is that? And then all of a sudden their weapons disappear. I think it's supposed to be Superman's heat vision, but it doesn't show that. And then they just disappear in a puff of smoke. And it says this nowhere in the issue, but that's dealt with over in Action Comics. So at this point, Clark manages to have enough strength. He crawls over to Diana. He's looking like a corpse, but he calls over and he's just like, hey, Zod and them are gone. They're back in the Phantom Zone. But, like, who the hell were those? And Diana's like, I don't know. They just showed up. Anyway, yeah, we're not very good right now. And he's like, don't worry about it. But we need to get out of here before anything else tries to fight us. So I'm going to get us out of here. And she's like, how? Like, neither of us have the strength to fly. He's like, no, I can do it. I'm going to get us up above the clouds. So he picks up Wonder Woman, gets her up above the clouds. He starts absorbing sunlight and then just starts screaming like, oh God, it hurts. I've absorbed all this radiation into me. And like, it's there, but it's painful to take in any sunlight because of it. It's genuinely harmful. And Wonder Woman's like, okay, we got to get you help. And he's just like, no, I can get you. I got to get you to a place where you can heal. Is like, would Olympus be cool? And he's like, no, Olympus sucks. Olympus is awful to us right now. No. Look, I got a friend. She's a healer. Her name is Hesia. She'll do it. But like, are you sure you can fly that far? He's like, don't worry, I got this. And he flies over to Hesia. We see that is in London. Wonder Woman is worse for wear. Superman's starting to come to a little bit. Hesia is like, oh yeah, no, get him inside, get her inside. By the way, I could also try to heal you, but you're an alien. I'm not sure how that would work out. And he's like, don't worry about it. I got this sorted. Diana, you gonna be cool? And she's like, yeah, totally. And he's like, by the way, I and before he could say love you, she's like, yeah, no, you said it before. I heard you. We're good. So he goes off. He takes off to the fortress. We see that Wonder Woman is being healed by Hesia with some sort of magic crystal, something or another. And it seems like there's some sort of risk to it. She says that she was banished because of using this crystal from, like, Themyscira. But Wonder Woman's like, I don't care. Use it. We need it here. So Superman over at the fortress, he tells the fortress, like, maximum security, don't let anything in, but, like, set the opacity of the crystals to 80% so I can just get, like, a trickle feeding of sunlight in. So that happens. And then in between there, I think it was Action Comics as well, we get a seed pod, a sea urchin, down at the bottom of the Mariana Trench that contains Doomsday and all of the Ghost Soldier stuff that happened over in Action Comics. They're pissed off at Superman because they think, oh, you do more harm than good. So they think, well, we're going to bring in Doomsday and just kind of guide him over to Superman. So Doomsday gets out of the seed pod. The Ghost Soldiers are just keeping an eye on it. They're seeing what's going on. A freaking Megalodon shows up and just swallows Doomsday whole. And they're like, oh, that's the end of Doomsday, right? And the other one in charge is like, not so fast. And all of a sudden, Doomsday just punches through the side of this shark and comes out of it. So they stay on its tail. They watch it as it's climbing up out of the seafloor of the Mariana Trench. But when the sub comes up and put its light on it, Doomsday just stops and like stares at it for a while. It's just like, well, it's not moving. What do you want us to do? And he's just like, bring it in. We'll things have changed over in Action Comics. We need Doomsday in here now. So the sub's like, all right, well, we'll move in now. It doesn't seem like he's going to be doing anything. And then all of a sudden, Doomsday just leaps off of the edge of this cliff face into the sub and takes it down. He just crashes it into the bottom of the seafloor. And then the headquarters is like, submarine, come in. You stopped responding. What's going on over there? As we see Doomsday super pissed, just swimming up to the surface of the Pacific Ocean. So then we cut back to London, exactly where we left off on the first page, and Superman and Wonder Woman are meeting up, and they're just like, hey, yeah, this is our first time alone in, like, forever. And apparently, in between those two scenes of the nuke and now, the entirety of Wonder Woman's run happens. Not actually all of it, but almost all of it. So she's like, yeah, all right, let's catch up. And Superman's like, they do a little talk off screen, and then he's like, what? You're the god of war now? What does that even mean? And she's like, I don't know, I'm like the representation of war, but it doesn't mean like I'm war hungry or anything. It just means I can feel war. It's hard to explain, but regardless, I'm going to try to convince people that war is bad. That's how I want to spend my time as god of war. That's kind of my goal right now. And she's like, all right, well, that's enough catch up. Anyway, now that we place this in the timeline, let's go have some fun. And we see them change into their civilian suits, and they go to a dance club where apparently Diana is a regular. And they're talking to the doorman, and Diana introduces Clark, and the doorman's like, oh yeah, Diana, head on in. Hey, Clark. And as Diana leaves, he's like, This is the first time she's ever brought a dude. I don't know how you got so lucky, but you better not screw it up because that woman over there is a goddess. And Clark's like, oh, you have no idea. So they go out on the dance floor, and Diana's like, do you even dance? I have no idea. And Clark just starts busting a move. He gets down with it. And she's like, this is nice. I'm having such a good time. But, like, it sucks that it's got to end, you know? Eventually, we got to go back to doing superhero things. And he was like, yeah, but, you know, let's enjoy tonight. You know, no matter what happens later on, we'll always have this night dancing till the sun rises in London. And after all, how bad could it possibly get? As we see Doomsday's fist come out of the surface of the water, to be continued in Superman 30, I believe. So, I like it. I'm not going to say it's a solid issue. It just takes a little breather. It says, like, okay, we need to get these people healed up. We're setting up for Doomed. We did this weird Ghost Soldier thing, which was mentioned in the most recent issue of Action Comics, which really puts this all sort of out of place. But and honestly, it kind of makes sense in the timeline because that all happened at the Doomsday period. So, yeah. I think that's kind of what's getting me the most, though, is the fact that this has somehow such a major skip in time. Like, we have this happen. We have the nuclear stuff happening. And then somehow half of Brian Azzarello's run on Wonder Woman happens. And now we're now. Like, that seems incredible to me that they could just say, yeah, sweep that under the rug. The timeline doesn't need to matter that much. But, like, it kind of does, you know? A little bit of talking back and forth could have resolved that. Beyond that, it's a solid issue. I think the art looks great. Don't really have a problem with pretty much anything in there. The only thing is there's some narration on the very first page that I skipped over. It's very confusing. The boxes do not make any sort of linear sense to me. So, like, half a point off for that. But everything else is fine. So I'm going to give this one 7.5. And I guess we'll see what happens in Superman Doomed across, I think, all the Superman titles. So, yeah. Batgirl number 30, written by Marguerite Bennett, art by Robert Gill. It's kind of just a little one-off one-shot here, with Marguerite Bennett taking over for Gail Simone for a little bit. And this is set just after Forever Evil, as far as I can tell, because Dick Grayson is dead. So we open up in Gotham City, and some random group of teenagers are having, like, a party of some sort, and apparently there's this game in Gotham, like Bloody Mary, but specific to Gotham, and it's called the Midnight Man. And in order to do it, you have to draw a door, which is a rectangle, in yellow chalk on the ground, and then you need flowers that are soaked in whiskey, and candles on each corner, and somehow that's the thing. And they say a little chant. They say, tick and talk, blah, blah, blah. Dawn is day and day is night, the midnight man. Put out the lights. And the clock chimes midnight and everyone's like, okay, nothing's happening. Let's go to bed. So they go to bed. They wait like an hour. Nothing happens at all. And then we cut to Batgirl, who is super upset that Dick Grayson is dead. And I'm just going to say this right now. There is a running narration in very short, like, sentence fragment narration boxes of her basically saying, like, I remember when Dick used to do this, and she's chastising herself at thinking about Dick, and, like, I know this is going to get me demonetized, but regardless, you get the point. Like, she is very sad that she is currently without Mr. Grayson. So, all of a sudden, she has she calls it a EMF reader. It's the thing from Ghostbusters that senses paranormal stuff, and it starts going nuts. And she's like, well, that's weird, because, like, just last issue, I fought literal vampires, and this thing never made a single blip. But now it's going crazy, so what could that mean? So she follows it to its source. She ends up in the apartment of those random teenagers, and apparently the doorway opens up. All of a sudden, it starts raising up, and a giant black inky hand comes out, and Batgirl's like, all right, that's a problem. And she sees this horrific-looking, the best I could describe it is like Fishman? Like, it looks like a fish in the face, but it's got, like, ink coming off of it constantly, like black goo. So Batgirl's like, Jesus Christ, everybody wake up. So everyone scrambles. They all see the Midnight Man. It starts spewing its goo everywhere. Jesus, this one's going to get me demonetized. And as they start running out of the apartment, all of the walls are just blocked off with a wall of this just black goo. And just like, oh, geez, the door, we're trapped. What are we supposed to do? So Batgirl's like, everyone make your way upstairs. I let the window open. We can get out that way. And as they start running away, Batgirl stares down the monster, and she realizes that it's like mimicking her face, and like it starts sprouting up the little like bat ears, and just like, okay, well that's something to work with. So she hits it with a batarang. She knows it's not going to do much because this thing is an extra dimensional entity, and she goes off with the rest of the teens upstairs. So at that point, the Midnight Man starts making tiny little ink bats to chase after them, and Batgirl slams the door on them before they can get in. And we see the Midnight Man just like sitting outside the door trying to push through it. So Batgirl's like, okay, it's something like a mimic or a shapeshifter. It started imitating bats as soon as I was there. That's weird. But the kids look over at the window they're supposed to go out of. It's also covered in black goop. The chimney's sealed up. This entire building is just completely sealed up with black goop. So Batgirl's like, all right, new plan. This thing is like a demon pretty much. You guys summoned a demon. Great job, by the way. In order to beat a demon, Batman always said that sage is poison to demons, because Batman taught us everything about everything. Do you guys have sage? And the person whose house it is like, yeah, my mom keeps some in the kitchen. It's like, all right, well, we got to get down there, but we can't go out the front door. And she punches open a vent and says, this vent is big enough for all of us to crawl into, so let's go. So they start making their way down there. And as they start crawling, we see that there is a little spider's web that has a spider in it. It lands on Batgirl's hand. And as soon as it lands on her hand, she comes face to face with the Midnight Man again. But now, because of the spider, it's transformed into a giant bug creature. And that creeps Batgirl out, but regardless, she's like, nope. And she smashes through the ground enough to cause the ventilation to collapse. They were right over the kitchen, so that worked out. She goes, she grabs the sage, she starts fire on the oven. She sets the sage on fire, throws it at the Midnight Man, and it just starts recoiling in pain and starts burning away. And Batgirl just starts like, again, the entire time she's had this inner narration about like, oh, I was always teased by Dick because all of the other ones are robins. They're birds, but I'm the bat. I'm the lone bat amongst the birds and blah, blah, blah. So she's having like a crisis of self-identity, but also missing Dick Grayson. And as she's yelling at this thing, she's like, you want my face? You want my name? You can't have it. I'm Batgirl. And she kicks it in the face. It starts recoiling, starts like moving around the whole house, but it does end up leaving. It is completely gone. And as the goo around the house starts dissipating, everyone's like, oh, we can escape again. You did it, Batgirl. And she's like, yeah, great, fantastic, awesome, we beat a demon. Next time, just play spin the bottle or something like that. And the kids are like, no, nobody plays spin the bottle anymore. And she's like, fine, Mario Kart, I don't care, bye. And she leaves out the place, and we get her ending little monologue here saying like, yeah, I've made Batgirl something all my own. I don't need anyone else to define it, but like, still really miss you, Dick. It's super hard without you. God, this is getting me demonetized. So in the very end, we get tiny, like this little horror movie stinger where there's some construction workers that open up this vat of paint, and they're like, oh, what is that? What is this? It smells like whiskey and chalk and little bits of flour. And it's just like, should we get new paint? And the one's like, nah, it doesn't matter. We can go ahead and use this paint to continue painting this yellow double line thing around this city block shaped just like a door. So yeah, that's that. I mean, it's fine. It's okay. I really didn't like the internal monologue. I'm going to say that straight up. And I think it's more so the idea that it doesn't feel natural. Like, don't get me wrong. Clearly there was a relationship or whatever between Dick and Babs. That's just accepted. Even in New 52 continuity where it isn't like official, they had feelings for each other. That's fine. What doesn't feel natural about it is the fact that nothing in the story is like saying that this should be happening as the internal. It feels like the story was written beforehand and they like put this stuff in over top as trying to like tie it in a little bit. And I'm not saying that's what happened, but that's how it feels. It feels very cut and paste on top of it rather than integrated naturally in. At no point in this story does Babs like have a flashback about Dick or like look upset about his passing or anything at all. It seems like this was kind of just something that was probably already scripted and done, and they just kept in the vault, and then they're like, okay, pull it out, but then change the text boxes to something more relevant. That's all I can think of. But yeah, no, it's just not 100% there for me. All in all, I'm gonna give this one. It's probably just like a 6, honestly. And again, it's not a bad issue, but it just feels so haphazard. It feels like it didn't have any purpose besides just, oh, I feel bad that my not boyfriend died. And that's fair, but like, make it feel like it has some weight, you know? Not just this, okay, and we're done with that now, bye. So yeah, I was 6 for this, and we'll see what happens next time, if we're going to continue down this path or if this really is just a one and done. Superboy number 30, written by Aaron Kuder, art by Jorge Jimenez. So last issue, John got through back in time, back to present day. And now we have a new writing team. That's the most I can say, because literally like nothing that was happening before matters at all anymore. So we open up with John. He's still evil. That's still a thing. He still is very much distrusting of people. And he's having a memory of the day that he killed a whole bunch of metahumans, and we see him snapping Aquaman's neck, and he's like, oh yeah, back when everything was awful, this is not that far into the future. That was a really good day. I liked that day. And then he hears a voice behind him saying like, oh, all this destruction, that's all your life has been about. And he turns to look, and we see just a cavalcade of different Superboys. And the one leading the charge is Khan, not John, Khan. And Khan's like, oh yeah, look at what you did. You're trying to kill all these metas to stop the timeline from where you even came from. And look at what you did. You even made some friends in the future. The only ones more destructive than you. God, how crazy is that? And Khan says like, yeah, no, we're a bunch of different Superboys like that could have been. And we're like all different versions of you, but here's the thing, the only thing that separates you is that you're the only one who's a Kryptonian human hybrid bent on destruction. That's it. Also, they're saying that, yeah, your human side's what makes you so destructive, so time to destroy that. And they all leap after John, and he stumbles backwards and tumbles into Times Square. And he's like, oh, I'm here, but when am I? Where am I? And he starts seeing a bunch of people around him taking pictures. They're like, oh, hey, it's Superboy. Wait, isn't that the dangerous one? He has all Superman's powers. Like, oh, should we call the National Guard? Gee, and everyone starts snapping pictures. So he gets up, he flies away, and he's just like, man, usually when I travel through time, it like makes my illness better, because if you remember, John has an illness. It's a genetic thing that's like killing him. And that's the whole reason Khan was even born. And as he's like flying over rooftops, he just kind of passes out a little bit and crashes down on the roof. So he starts coughing up blood, and he is like, okay, I'm like actually dying now. This is not good. I have to find my adoptive father, Harvest, and get him to save me. And then all of a sudden this figure rises up behind him, and he's just like, oh, hey, I've seen a bunch of ways to land, but that looks like the most painful, right on your face. And we see that it is Guardian, who, he's a guy, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Guardian. He's just a dude who helps control Metropolis, so I guess we're in Metropolis. So at that point, John's just like, okay, if I gotta fight this guy, I could drain him. If he's a meta, I can like take him on, I can do this. And he senses that this guy is not a meta, but he's still very distrustful. He's not wanting any part of this at all. And Guardian's just like, oh yeah, looks like you're a bit sick. I saw you take a tumble. Do you need a hand? And he outstretches a hand. And John's just like, this guy's so trusting. This will be easy. And he goes to throw a punch, and Guardian just stops it. And he's like, dude, chill. I am not here to hurt you. You look like you're about to pass out. And then he does. And Guardian's like, all right, well, hey, base, I need to pick up. Superboy here has got some major health problems. So at this point, we have another flashback to when John was a kid. He's in like some sort of shack, and then who I'm guessing is Harvest. He says that it is. He says, my father would wake me before the sunrise, but like he looks like a normal person. Harvest walks in, he's like, get everything you need. We're not coming back here. Let's go. And immediately John's just bouncing off the walls. He gets all the stuff. He's like, I'm ready. And as they make their way outside, he's like, it's too late. They're already here. And we look at this horde of Superboys outside. And then as Harvest turns around, he's like, son, but he's actually Superman now. And so Superboy wakes up. He's on a medical table. He's all strapped in. He's just like, I don't know what's worse, the nightmare I was having or waking up in a dark room on a medical table. So he gets off the table and he's just like, whoever's out there, you don't want me backed into a corner. I'm very dangerous. And then the people there basically say like, oh, sorry about that. Lights on. And they turn on all the lights. And we see it's just like a happy-go-lucky crew of scientists. And they're like, hello, hi, we're here working at Star Labs. We noticed you were sick and we're going to do everything we can to help fix you. Let me give you the roll call here. You already met Guardian. You can call him Michael if you don't like Guardian, but everything else is classified. We've got a girl scientist who's super into you named Needy. We have Peter, who I guess is the tech guy, because he just looks like the tech guy. And Aya, who, I don't know, she's the smart one. Despite all them being scientists, she's the one who comes up with the crazy ideas. And then we get the main older professor-looking guy named Dr. Harold Alexander Gray. And they run Star Labs AID division, the Advanced Ideas division. So Superboy's like, all right, well, I don't trust any of you. This is way too weird. And he's just like, okay, whatever. So we ran some tests, and we noticed your genes are, like, super crazy, but we also know you're not Khan. Like, we ran tests on Connor Kent. You're not him. So who, like, it's okay. We can have more than one Superboy. We don't distrust you. Who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm John. And he's just like, oh, well, John, nice to meet you. Anyway, here's the thing. Your genes, we ran a little scan on them. You must be having like crazy bad dreams, right? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, also you're from the future, or at least time travel to some extent, right? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, cool, awesome. So anyway, we're going to show you to your room now. And we have Needy and Guardian walking him down this hallway. Needy's just straight up hitting on him the whole way down. And then they show him his room. And as they enter in, the lights are off. And he sees his suit, but then he sees like an evil Superboy inside of it. And he hears a voice saying like, oh, we've been waiting. But when the lights come on, he sees no one's there. And he's just like, oh, okay, I'm just actively hallucinating now. That's cool. That's great. I'm really looking forward to that. So at that point, they say like, oh, okay, well, we'll let you be. The kitchen's open all night. If you want something, just go and take whatever you want. I'll get you in the morning. See ya. And the final thing is him looking over in the mirror and seeing one of the evil Superboys like glaring at him saying like, John, you can't escape your past. And next time, Superboy versus Parasite, I guess. Okay. 1. Marv Wolfman was the previous writer. Nothing against Marv Wolfman. But, like, I'm so happy we have a new writer because this feels so much like a breath of fresh air where it's just like, hey, you know all that crazy stuff we did of, like, oh, the time traveling and, like, this guy, he's setting up all this stuff and he's got a team now and they're in the future, but then they're in the past and da-da-da-da-da. It's just gone. It's all gone. We're starting completely fresh. We're not even tying into Teen Titans anymore. That's done with. We finished that. Now it's just its own book, and it's able to do its own thing. And that's all I've wanted for 30 goddamn issues now. So thank you, Aaron Kuder. I'm happy about that. As for the quality of this issue trying to be a little bit objective, it's a weak start. It doesn't feel like it really has a strong thing. It's still kind of cleaning up the past threads of the last arc and trying to explain, like, here's the parts that you need to actually care about, and here's all the stuff you can ignore. The stuff where he was making friends in the future, ignore. The fact where he's pretending to be Con-El, ignore. The fact that he's evil and has a history of killing metas from the future, okay, that part you need to remember. And that's fine. Thank you for telling me that stuff. But that means that you do have kind of a weak issue. Sorry, my automatic lights just went out. I have them set to a timer, and I'm filming this late. My bad. But regardless, it's a fine start, but I am looking forward to seeing this getting a bit more ground for however long it has, because I think it only has like one arc's worth of issues left. So we'll see what happens when we get there. But for now, this is like a flat 7. Green Lantern Corps number 30, written by Van Jensen, art by Scott Kolins and Chris Batista. So last issue we had a whole thing of getting the Durlan Green Lantern named Van Jensen back over to the side of the Green Lantern Corps. This issue is basically, okay, why? What purpose does he serve? And it's him earning his keep. So we cut back to centuries ago on the planet Durla, and we're getting a history lesson as to, hey, who the heck even are the Durlans? And we show what appears to be a Durlan. He's got like a spear, and he's out hunting these cute little, like, furry woodland critters. And as he goes to attack one of them with the spear, suddenly some tendrils come out of it and start popping out, and it starts transforming into this giant, huge beast that kills the Durlan. Turns out that the thing that we thought was a Durlan was not a Durlan. The tiny little woodland critter is what we think of as a Durlan. So the narration says, like, oh, they thought that, they had to be prey, but then eventually they realized, we could be the predators. So it transforms back into what we think of as a Durlan, and it makes its way back into the little village tribe thing, and everyone's like, oh, welcome home, my wonderful husband, have you brought us a great feast? And he's just like, yeah, totally. And then we see that the entire tribe is burning down. It's like, wait a minute, you're not my husband. And it's like, no, all of your species will be killed. And the thing that now has taken on the name of the Durlan keeps its shape as that alien type, whatever it may have originally been called. So then we cut over to Mogo, modern day, and Van Jensen's like, yeah, look, we know all the Durlans are out hiding in the forests, but we just don't know where, and they can look like anything, so we've got to take care of that. We got to, strike. And it's like, okay, but, they can look like anything, and they've been here theoretically for years. We can't just go and get them. And Von Daggle's like, yeah, no, totally. They could be anything. There's no way you could track them down. And it's like, okay, then, what use are you, man? He's just like, oh, we can't track them down, but Mogo can get them out of hiding. And John Stewart's like, oh, okay, I got Mogo, you cool with this? And he's like, yeah, it's not the first time I've sacrificed for the Green Lantern Corps. I'm sure it won't be the last. So at this point, we have Arisia step up, and she's like, hey, John, by the way, because we didn't update you in any other book, Sector 2814, the sector where Earth is, it's under Red Lantern control. Hal wanted to tell you, but he got a little bit preoccupied with the whole going to war thing. And John's like, all right, whatever. I'm sure Guy will keep things safe while I'm doing this Durlan thing. And Fatality's like, oh, yeah, and besides, they say nothing about Star Sapphire going in. I'd love to meet your mother one day. And he's like, she'd love you. So then we meet the Durlans out in the forest of Mogo. And just they're just complaining. They're just like, Jesus Christ, it's been flooding and snowing and there's been fires. What is this wrong with this planet? And the other Durlan's like, oh, they are trying to attack us. They're trying to make this place completely unlivable for us, but we are stronger than that, and we still have our vials of radiation. They can last us several more days, more than enough to set our plan in motion. And then a lightning bolt comes down, strikes next to them, and they're like, Jesus Christ. And then all of a sudden another fire starts up. They're like, oh my God, this is literally the worst. And they're like, okay, well, let's transform into something that can fly, so we can just fly out of the forest. And it's like, as soon as we're up in the sky, they can pick us off one by one. We got to stay low, transform into something fast, and we'll outrun the fire. So they'll turn into these weird tiger or leopard things and start running through the forest. And we see Von Daggle, John, and Fatality just standing over top the forest, just being like, oh yeah, it's all coming together. And he, at a certain point here, Von Daggle says oh yeah, They're still dangerous, though, so we've got to make sure we fully back them into a corner. And he says, we have our weaknesses, but our strengths outnumber them. Remember the Valingians? And John's like, no. And he's like, exactly. So then we get, what the hell's a Valingian? And we see on the planet Valingia, this king dude is there, and one of his advisor comes in, and it's just like, my lord, someone wishes to take your life. And he's like, what? Who could possibly? And then it transforms. Turns out the guy was a Durlan. He's like, me. So he stabs the guy. And as he's leaving, he transforms into a neighboring alien race who it says its name's a Zekloid. And it's like, death to all Valingians. So it triggers a war between the Zekloids and the Valingians that ends up killing both planets and star systems pretty much completely, to the point where the Durlans can come in and just wipe out the remaining bit and say, like, this is ours now. And they continue to wear the faces of the first people they killed. So anyway, back on Mogo, we have the leopards finally make their way out of the forest, and they're like, okay, I don't know what's out in this area. We didn't scout this far, but like, we'll be safe here. There's no way they could take us down. And then all of the Green Lanterns that are available are just standing there, like, at the edge of the forest, and be like, bro, we weren't trying to kill you. We were just trying to flush you out, and you fell for it. You guys are stupid. So they start transforming into like as many beasts as they can. And the Green Lanterns just start making cages. They're like, we're not here to kill you. We're just here to contain you and stop you completely. So they start doing that. We see one of them manages to break free. Also, Mogo's like, one of the Green Lanterns is like, Mogo, you burned down your forest and killed so many of your creatures. Are you cool with that? And he's like, yeah, more stuff will grow. No big deal. Not a problem. So one of them is set off to the side. Fatality is in between it and Von Daggle. It's just like, you want to get to him, you got to get through me. And he's like, all right, backhands her away. And he goes for a punch on Von Daggle. And he's like, I can punch through whatever form you take. But he takes a very tough form, enough that because they were pushing themselves so hard to adapt and transform away from all these natural disasters, they ran out of energy, and now he's unable to hold the transformation, and he turns back into a pile of tentacle goop. And Jon Stewart's like, Jesus, why does it look like that? And he's just like, oh, that's our natural form. Whenever we aren't able to transform, we look like that. So they put them all in the cages, and they box them up. And Von Daggle mentions, we choose this look, like this is the way that we usually look, but typically when the 6-minute war happened, we all went back to our tentacle forms. And John's like, what the hell's a 6-minute war? So then we get that explanation. And apparently centuries ago, the Guardians, the little blue guys, they came up and they were like, ew, Durlans, you guys are able to like hide and not be traced. That's dangerous to us. We're going to stop all of you. So they just launch an attack on the Durlans and completely flush them out and take them all over. And then they try to put them all in science cells, and it's like, there's too many. We can't do that. And it's like, all right, well, we're just going to put them all back on planet Durlan and not let them leave. That's good enough. But as it turns out, these Durlans are like the warlike evil ones that went out causing assassinations and spy stuff. There were actually good Durlans who just hung back on the planet and just lived life and were totally cool with things. And when the Guardians dropped off all the assassins and murderers, huge-ass war broke out. And nobody could tell who was on what side because they're all shapeshifters. So somebody on some of the sides launched a bomb, and within 6 minutes, the entire planet was destroyed with radiation poisoning. But some of them buried underground and ended up surviving, but with heavy casualties and illnesses and stuff like that. So they went to a couple of, they call them Krolotean gremlins, that do experiments to try to give them back their shape-shifting ability. Turns out it works, but it comes at the cost that the shape-shifting is powered by that same radiation from the 6-minute war. Thus, their eternal reminder and curse of what the Guardians took away from them, and the Green Lantern Corps on top of it. So they put them all down in the cells that Mogo made on the planet. Fatality's calling out Von Daggle, being like, oh, if the Durlans are so crafty, why should we be trusting you? And he's like, you shouldn't. Jesus, man, I've been telling you this the whole time, but like, I am doing the right thing. And so John steps in and be like, I vouched for him. He's cool. Don't worry about it. So then John starts saying like, but what if they're right? what if the Green Lanterns really do deserve this? Because look at what we did to the Durlan race. And Fatality's like, that was centuries ago. The Guardians aren't even a thing anymore. Don't worry about it. And John's like, yeah, that makes sense. So then we cut over to the planet Durla, and we meet one of the Khund who has a whole bunch of like mech suits that are empty. And he's like, we brought you the mech suits from our warehouse thing, but like you guys can't even hold a form. Why? And he's talking like the ancients, and the ancients are the ones who are like goop. And it's just like, oh, well, our final attack is at hand. And it's like, what are you going to do with them? And so the ancients start coming up out of their pit on Durla, and they go into these mech suits, and it allows them to hold a form for whatever time they want, because now they're just piloting mech suits. And it's like, oh, and now it's time for the agents to march to war. To be continued in Green Lantern's Uprising, which is a crossover between these two books of Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps, as if they haven't just been one book for the past like 6 months now. So yeah, all in all, fine issue. I like the backstory for the Durlans. I think it does a good job of fleshing all that out, and it progresses the story forward. Also, when they catch the Durlans in the trap, one of the Durlans basically says like, the war hasn't even started, man. You don't even know. You don't even know how bad it's going to get. So I'm sure that's what Uprising's going to be about. All in all, it's like I'm going to give it a 7.5. It's very close to a 7, but I'm giving it that extra little inch because I'm grateful we finally did just a full expository backstory dump on what the Durlans are, because I feel like that was sorely missing, especially when the only other Durlan we know about is Chameleon Boy, who's totally chill and cool. So at least here we get a little bit of backstory as to like, how did we get here? And it makes sense to me. So yeah, 7.5 for this. Justice League 3000 number 5, written by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis, art by Raymund Bermudez. So, last issue, we had a whole thing of Green Lantern managing to escape from, what's her name, the reality warper chick, and then she ended up, like, suffocating him in space. And then we ended with Flash being reborn along with a future version of Firestorm, who says, all right, let's go kick some ass. This issue opens up with Firestorm saying like, it's been a month since the last issue, and I don't really feel like it. And everyone's like, what do you mean you don't feel like it? It's like, I know I said I was just willing to go kick some ass, but then like I had some time to think about it, and like, I really don't see the point. Like, you sent these other Justice Leagues out there. Flash was killed. Green Lantern got kidnapped. Everyone else on a prison planet. Why would I want to be a part of that? And the Wonder Twins are just like, you're a Justice Leaguer. Come on, man. What the hell? So the twins start arguing with each other, saying like, oh, yeah, no, this is... The female one's like, this is awful. Like, we shouldn't have even bothered trying to bring him back because he's two people in one, and we could barely get one person in one right. And the male Terry's like, but like, he needs help. Flash needs help in order to get this done. We had to do it. So then Flash walks out, and he's just like, hey, could you guys stop arguing like a bunch of preschoolers, and like, we're just going to go out there and do it. All right. Like, so be it. So we cut over to the planet where everyone is under attack by the Convert, who has the ability to possess like everybody's bodies, and they're just attacking Batman and Ariel as a swarm. And Ariel's just like, man, I've been on the run forever. I'm not scared of this, but like, Jesus, we are definitely going to die. And Batman's just like, yeah, well, when you say it like that. And Ariel points out like, you seem to be a lot more lighthearted than the actual Batman records show. And he's just like, well, I guess that wasn't saved in your genetic sample. I guess that's something I retained from my other self. But from what I know of Bruce Wayne, I actually prefer myself like this. So as they're all fighting against the Convert people, Wonder Woman and Superman are going up against Kali, another one of the 5. And apparently Kali is saying that she or he, it's a bit hard to tell, is the actual, like, god, like the Indian god Kali, and saying that they're able to absorb the life forces of other people and that fuels their strength or whatnot. So they launch into battle. We have Superman once again, like, flirting with Wonder Woman, saying how, oh yeah, no, me and you, like, Wonder Woman makes the comment saying like, oh, Kali, you will never hear me beg. And Superman's like, I remember hearing you beg in bed. What? And Wonder Woman's just like, dude, that didn't happen. It straight up didn't. And he's just like, oh, I know you can't resist me. So they continue fighting. Kali keeps on calling him out, saying like, hey, Diana, like, you are super strong and whatnot. You should be with us. You should be in the five. We can resculpt the universe in our image and whatnot. And she's like, no, I'll never join you. And she's like, all right. So then Kali throws Wonder Woman into a wall, and Superman genuinely gets upset. She's like, hey, don't hurt her. Like, I'll surrender. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't hurt her. And Kali points out, like, oh my God, you actually, like, genuinely care. I thought you were all just like big words and whatnot. I didn't think you were able to see above your own ego. And he's like, nah, seriously, it's a thing for me. So all of Convert's army starts just collapsing around them. Turns out that Kali is using them, draining their life force to fuel herself. And the one convert that's left over is just like, hey, yeah, we need to wrap this up. We've got a bunch of other stuff we need to do here. So Convert says that he's still dealing with Ariel and Batman, but it just takes him using a tiny bit of strategy to get them surrounded and start beating the crap out of them, which is everybody's on the back foot. That's where Flash comes in, and he's like, hey guys, I'm alive again. They brought me back. And everyone's like, oh, do you know how exactly our birthing process works? And he's like, no, why? Is there something I should know? And they're like, no, not at the moment. By the way, this is Ariel. She's kind of our mother. And he's like, oh, that's weird. What do you mean by that? And he's like, don't worry about it. Anyway, go off and try to save the day. So they show Flash is just beating up a whole bunch of the convert people, and they question, hey, Flash, by the way, how did you even get to this planet? And it's like, oh, that portal thing that we were supposed to use to get back, we just brought another one. So there's a portal able to transport us out, just right up, waiting in orbit. We can have it down here in no time flat. And all of a sudden, there's this massive explosion. And Batman's like, was that our portal? And Flash is like, no, that's Firestorm. We also brought a Firestorm into existence here. And he shows up and he's like, huh, you know, I didn't think I would have fun blowing up a giant amount of, like, evil people, but I did. I'm going to keep doing that. So at that point, Kali jumps in, starts attacking Firestorm. And it's just a one-on-one between them because to some extent, they're actually evenly matched there. And so at that point, Wonder Woman and Superman, they look up and they're like, oh, hey, Firestorm. That means that they killed another innocent person in order to recreate him. Superman's like, we need to talk about our origins. They're super duper troubling. And Wonder Woman's like, I don't care about that. I just care that I'm alive now. We don't have to worry about what happened before. And she says, now get me back in the fight. Throw me at Kali so I can join in. And Flash comes in, gets Wonder Woman and Superman out, brings them over to Batman, just being like, hey, we got a portal. We need to get the hell out of here. And everyone's like, what? Huh? What? No, we got to fight against the Five or whatnot. It's like, it's a losing fight. We're definitely not going to win this here. We can do it some other time. Let's go. And they say the Green Lantern, getting him, finding him, that's the priority right now. But Firestorm straight up doesn't want to hear it. Flash is like, hey man, I got the portal, we got to go. And he's like, nah, I agreed to come along to make sure you didn't die, but like, I'm not going to be part of the mission. I'm just going to stay here and like, kill this person because they're clearly evil. And that feels right to me that I just kill them. And Flash is like, that's not really what we do as the League. And he's like, I don't care because I'm not part of the League. Bye. So against his will, Flash goes over and just like, hey, Firestorm isn't coming. I guess we're just leaving him behind. And Batman's like, no, go get him. We got to bring him and then go get the portal, bring it down to Earth. So as Kali is about to be straight up killed because Firestorm is that overpowered, Flash runs in, grabs him, and pulls him away. And Kali's like, all right, cool, I'll take the win. So Firestorm gets pissed off they did that. But at that point, he turns around to Ariel and is like, oh, hey, yeah, you created all this. Shouldn't we be focused on killing the Five? And Ariel's like, no, not like that. We need to do it on our terms. We're supposed to be better than that. And he's like, all right, screw all of you. I am a murderous psychopath because I was formed wrong, I guess. But regardless, they call down the portal. Portal comes down to Earth. But Flash is like, it shouldn't be here that fast. I just signaled it and it's already down here. And turns out that the portal is under control of that computer virusy guy named Coeval. And yeah, now it's like a mech suit for him to control. I like the introduction of Firestorm. I like this idea that because there's holes in memory and Firestorm is actually two people, that he's even more unstable than the other ones. And he has even like bigger holes in who he was. And like, he doesn't even recognize he's part of the Justice League in the past. I like that in concept. I think my problem that I'm running into here is that it feels like it's going too big too quick, if that makes sense. It feels like we've got 4 of the 5 already here dealt with. Obviously, the reality warper is somewhere else, but like from everything they've set up in this book so far, it doesn't feel like there is any way to turn this around and say, yeah, it makes sense that they win this fight from this point forward. It seems like that's a reasonable thing to assume because constantly they've been having their asses handed to them. I would say Firestorm could probably take out 1 or 2 of them, but like everyone else, it doesn't seem like there's any sort of anything. Now, maybe that's going to be a thing where they're going to turn into a like, oh, we learned the power of teamwork, everybody, and now we're able to fight together because we work together so well. And if so, fine, I guess, whatever. But it just seems like they're so hopelessly outclassed by this. I would have rather there be like, they try to take each one on like one at a time or something, and then we get into this bigger stuff a couple issues down the road. But I guess considering that Keith Giffen's latest book of Threshold got canceled like immediately, he's trying to get the story he wants out of the way super fast. He doesn't know how long this is even going to continue for. So yeah, all in all, I'm going to say this one's probably like a 6.5. It's not quite up there in like good territory, but it's at least passable, and I guess that's something. World's Finest number 22, written by Paul Levitz, art by Scott McDaniel, R.B. Silva, and Yildiray Cinar. So last issue was the end of the First Contact crossover with Batman Superman, and they had a portal to Earth 2, and Power Girl thought it was legitimate, wanted to go through. Huntress didn't think so, and so it all blew up. And this book opens up literally in the wreckage of it, and Huntress is like, I saved you, you had no idea where that portal was going to go, don't be huffy with me. And Power Girl's like, it was home. I knew it was. I saw it. It was definitely our place. And they continue to like argue about it as they start getting shot at. And they see that because they're still on Gamora, a whole bunch of Argus agents have shown up. They don't know who these two are. So they just start shooting wildly. They're just like, this equipment is property of Argus as of now. You need to step away. And just like, you know what? I'm pissed. All right, let's get into this. So she runs over and she like lifts up the ground. Power Girl just underneath the Argus agents starts flipping them. Huntress is like, oh, do you want me to jump in and all? She's like, pick one. So Power Girl's getting shot at and she's just brushing it off. Huntress is punching a few of them as well. And all the Argus agents, all that's just like, we need reinforcements. We need some extra help here. Send back up now. And as they are continuing to beat up everybody, a huge tank comes through the wall, and Power Girl just immediately goes over, like bends the front turret in half, and it's like, oh yeah, this really gets all my attention out. And then we just pause that. We just full stop, and we go back to almost 4 years ago on Earth 2, where Huntress has not quite taken up the mantle of Huntress yet. She is going out and she's trying to free some women who were brought in as immigrants and they are being used in like a sex trade. And there's this cabin out in the middle of nowhere that she knew the women were being kept at, and she got caught in a trap. And so she's currently bound up, and she's like, oh God, Mom would hate to see me caught up in such an easy trap like this. So the guys who caught her are talking. They're just like, hey, we may be doing illegal sex crimes and whatnot, but I'm not here for a kidnapping rap. We got to get rid of that girl wholesale. So one of them says, yeah, we'll make sure she's a milk carton picture by tomorrow. They hear a thud from the next room. Huntress manages to escape from her, like, chair she was tied up in, but her hands and feet are still bound. So they come at her. She starts doing all this kung fu stuff, starts taking them out until one of them has a gun just trained on her. Just be like, stop moving or I'm going to shoot you. And one of them pulls back the gun and says like, hey, bullets show up in an autopsy, but this won't, and just smacks her upside the head with the butt of a rifle. So Huntress comes to. She is tied to a tree out in the middle of a snowy field. And she's not able to get out of the ropes any too quickly because a wolf is there and is super hungry looking. So it pounces towards Huntress. She does some more kung fu on it. She ends up actually snapping the tree rather than getting free of the ropes. And that scares away the wolf enough that it's like, yeah, okay, I'm not messing with that. So Huntress is like, all right, time to take care of this once and for all. She makes a fire, takes one of the burning logs from it, throws it into the cabin, and everything just starts catching on fire. So everyone runs out of the building through the front entrance. Huntress takes out the guys one by one as they come out. And finally she's left with just one guy left. And the guy's like, oh, what the hell are you? And she's like, I'm pissed off. So she knocks the guy out. All the girls are safe. And she's like, hey, does any of you happen to have a cell phone on you? So I guess they got out of Gomorrah. Now they're in Chicago. Huntress is saying like, hey, I stole one of the hard drives from Gomorrah. It's like full of security footage. I'm going to look into it and see if I can figure out more about that portal and see if it was back to our actual world. And Huntress is like, all right, whatever. Or sorry, Power Girl's like, whatever. I've got other stuff I need to take care of. So we get just a little page where she flies up and hitches a ride on a airplane that's going by. And she's like, all right, sorry, you guys are going too slow. I got to get to where I'm going. She flies off ahead of the plane. We see Huntress is using the Batcave tech. She's like hacked into the Batcave in order to analyze the footage faster. And she sees, genuinely have no idea how this works, but she sees footage through the portal, I think, where it's the Kaizen of Gomorrah is talking about Earth 2 or whatever, and they're showing footage of it. And Huntress notices something. She's like, okay, that seals it. So she calls up Kara. Kara, meanwhile, is in a law office in New York. If you remember, she had her business stolen from her by a fake Mr. Terrific. And all the lawyers come in and say, like, we did it. We got your company back. It's all yours. You just need to sign this paperwork. And she's like, yeah, totally awesome. I'm so happy I paid for so many hundreds of hours of legal fees for you guys to do this. And he's like, we weren't conning you, if that's what you're wondering about. She's like, whatever, it doesn't matter. So she signs the paper and says, you guys are still on my payroll though, right? And he's like, yeah, of course, if you want to get more hours in, for sure. She's like, cool, awesome. Sell my business. Sell it all off, leave me the money and a single lab to work from, and try to keep the transaction fees under 5%. So at that point, Huntress and Power Girl meet back up on the rooftop, and the Huntress is basically like, hey, I looked at the footage. In the footage I saw in the background, there was this device that my dad, Batman, was working on our Earth just before he was killed. There's no way that is going to be left unfinished in the same state that he left it on any other Earth. That has to be our Earth. So yeah, let's go back home. And they shake hands and agree. They're ready to go. And that's where the issue ends. I gotta say, this one, I've always critiqued this book that it doesn't feel like any sort of forward progress is being made. It always feels like kind of just a slice of life comic with very vague motions of a plot in the background. This is the first time I feel like, okay, we're actually doing something. From the beginning of this book, it's always been a thing of they want to find a way home. This is the first time where they're presented with actual evidence that is possible, that it is still there, and they have like visual confirmation that they can get through a portal. And it feels like we're finally doing a direct plot line of saying we are going to do this thing. So hopefully we can keep up that trajectory, because if so, I'm super into it. Beyond all that, Karen selling the Star Labs or Star Industries or whatever it's called, the STARR. I'm not quite getting it, especially when she has yet to go through a portal to her own Earth. I feel like wanting to have that money on standby and a whole team of scientists would probably be the better idea, but I'm sure there's some sort of story reason that's going to become apparent eventually. Either way, it's a decent issue. I still would only give it like a flat 7, but honestly, it feels a lot better than a lot of other issues this series has cranked out recently, especially that First Contact debacle where issues were published out of order. It made things very confusing. So yeah, 7 for this. We'll see if we can keep up the trajectory moving forward. Constantine number 13, written by Ray Fawkes, art by ACO. So last issue and for like 6 issues before that was Forever Evil Blight. That was just happening. And Ray Fawkes says, okay, but I was doing something before that where Constantine was forced into joining the Cult of the Cold Flame and a whole other thing was happening. So we're just going back to that plot line. And we pick up in Moscow where Constantine walks into this garage. There's a man inside named Viktor Mironov, who Constantine calls Spellbinder. And he gives the whole expository thing. Spellbinder is a master of mental magic. He's able to peer into people's minds and control them and get their secrets, stuff like that. And he's like, yep, that's me. And we all know that Constantine here is a tiny little scaredy baby and joined the Cult of the Cold Flame. So I'm never going to join them. Why do you think you can just show up here? And Constantine's like, well, how about this? The reason I'm here is hidden up in my head. So why don't you peer inside and see if you can figure it out? And Spellbinder's like, all right, your funeral, man. So he looks inside, and immediately after that, the issue gets weird, like strange panel layouts. So everything like spirals out. It's very, not hard to read, but it's strange. So we go to a bridge that Constantine seems familiar with. Behind him is Nick Necro and Billy Batson, who are obviously just figments of his imagination, but they are basically telling him like, hey, here's how you deal with a thing like Spellbinder. We've got like a plan. We've got steps we need to follow. We'll just stick to the plan. Constantine looks over and he sees a young woman named Maureen jump off the bridge. It seems like that's a memory from his past that he seems upset about. And Nick is just like, forget about that. Focus on the plan. Step 1, how did you get here? And we see a flashback to Sargon and John just sitting in a bedroom together. And as Constantine is looking at a picture of Spellbinder, all of a sudden his entire like brain starts spazzing him out. He starts getting like some huge swaths of magic flying around. And Sargon calls in Tanarak and just like, hey, something's wrong with Constantine. Tanarak's like, cool, something's in his head. Let me get it out with my sword. And he just stabs Constantine through the eyes. Constantine shoots up awake. Turns out it was just a nightmare. He makes his way to a bathroom, and he looks in the mirror and suddenly sees he's old, and it's written in blood on the mirror is, there's something in your head. So he turns around, Spellbinder's there, starts like trying to pull open his mind and whatnot. Constantine fights against it. He's like, no, this is just a trick. It's just a spell. You're not going to get into it that easily. I know all the emotional triggers and whatnot. And Spellbinder's like, yeah, no, you do have like a lot of power. I can easily sense that, but it's still not going to protect you from showing your secrets. So we go down deeper. We see Constantine arguing with Zatanna, saying Zatanna's calling him out on being just an uncaring dick for like his entire life. And as she storms away angrily, we see Constantine is making out with Nightmare Nurse. And then she transforms suddenly into, God, I can't remember the guy's name. Mr. E, I think. I don't know. One of the wizard guys we met earlier. So at this point, Constantine falls down into another hole, but he manages to quiet his mind. He manages to get rid of all this stuff. And all that's left are 3 giant cigarette like cartons. And Spellbinder's like, seriously? Your vice, that's the thing you're hiding your secrets in? All right, whatever. Let's go ahead and do this. And Constantine's like, no, this is step 2. Don't do it. So he opens up one of them saying, like, one of these has the secret. The other 2 are just going to be bonus secrets that I get to find out. So he opens up the first one, and we see Zatanna is, like, sitting with John, telling him like, I can't keep doing this. You're like a rotten person to the core. It's something's got to change. And she ends up using some backwards magic on him. And the spell she uses is, you need to be a better person. And we see Constantine is saying like, I don't give a damn about the Justice League or the whole world. Nothing of that matters. And then all of a sudden he like pauses. He gets a weird like swirl effect on his face. It manages to undo itself. And then he's just like, oh, did you say something, Zatanna? Did I miss something? And it's implied that Zatanna put a spell on him that manages to alter how he acts, how he is as a person. And John's like, no, oh, you messed with my mind, Z. That can't be possible. So then he goes to the second pack, and as he opens it up, we see back when Constantine was killed, like during a tie-in to Trinity War, Papa Midnight brought him back, but apparently the ghost of Constantine was talking to Papa Midnight saying, hey, I've got a plan. We're going to wipe out the bad guys once and for all. We're going to have all the magic to ourselves. But in order for this to work, I need to go out and get a couple of like magic people on my side, but I need to keep it secret even from me for this to work. And if we play our cards right, Spellbinder will be seeing this memory right about now. So at that point, we cut over to what is actually happening in the real world. We're at the Cult of the Cold Flames main temple, and Papa Midnight is showing up in front of Tanarak and Sargon. And Tanarak's like, hey, Papa Midnight, I heard you were in that weird machine thing during Forever Evil Blight along with Sargon. That's the only reason I agreed to this meeting. What's up? And he brings like this broken corpse of a body, and he's like, this dude was one of my guys, and your cult did this to him. And Tanarak's like, yeah, that's what we do. Now, why shouldn't we do that to you? He's like, I'm going to cut you a deal. The deal is, when I brought back Constantine, I put in like a little failsafe that allows me to not only control him, but also destroy him. If you want me to make sure that Constantine continues to work for you, instead of turning him back over to me, I require a contract that says that whatever Cult of Cold Flame does, you stay out of Manhattan. That is my area, and I will keep my people safe there. And there's just like, or we could just kill you, and like, it won't be a problem at all. And Midnight's like, oh, you could try, but there will be a price to that. So we cut back into the dreamscape, and Spellbinder's like, all right, I have a feeling that's the one you wanted me to see, but there's still one more pack, so I'm going to open that up. So he pops it open, and inside is just a burning house. It's just a house on fire. It's just like, all right, somebody you loved was burned here. That's all I'm picking up, but like, there's nothing else. And we start seeing like flashbacks to all the different things that we just saw throughout the issue. We go back to the bridge, and Nick Necro is restating the plan. He's like, step 1, remember how you got here. Step 2, you had to quiet your mind. Step 3, you faced your secrets. And now step 4. And we see Constantine manages to turn the tables on Spellbinder. He unleashes just this huge magical storm or something like that on him in his mindscape. We see a whole bunch of images of like a boy and a sacrificed cat that are both marked with like demonic symbols. And as we come out, we see Constantine's just sitting there smoking a cigarette. Spellbinder starts turning back into his normal form, and Constantine's just like, hey man, thanks for helping me out. I needed you to go in there and unlock a few secrets that even I needed to know. But what do you say? I'm sure I asked you the question somewhere in the subconscious. And Spellbinder's like, you pushed me out. Nobody's ever been able to push me out before. And Constantine's like, yeah, I'm special like that. Anyway, I need an answer. What are you going to do? And Spellbinder comes to, he looks up at John, he's just like, you'll know when the time comes. When you need me the most, either I'll be there or I won't. That's the most I could say. But as it stands now, go back, report to your Cult of Cold Flames, send your assassins after me. I'm not going to join your stupid club. Just go ahead and do what you need to do. And Constantine's like, all right, yeah, whatever you say, boss. So Constantine leaves out the building, and as he does so, he gets like a little vision of that burning home from before. And in the flames comes a voice that says, Johnny, come here. And Constantine's like, yeah, keep your pants on, I'm coming. So next issue, whatever the hell's in that fire. This issue required a reread for me. I read it the once through. It was actually one of the first things I read for this week. And then by the time it came time to record it, I was like, I don't feel like I actually got what was happening. Because it is a very dreamlike issue. It is a very moving through. Nothing is like directly as it's represented, as is evident by that scene where he's making out with Mr. E. Yeah. clearly there's some like difference here as to what stuff is supposed to mean. I'm not entirely sure I understand it around the second time, but I at least get the basic beats of it. I understand the movement through here and how we're changing the status quo a little bit. We're setting up that Constantine has this larger plan that's existed way before he even joined the Cult of the Cold Flame. So I'm up for that. It definitely strikes me more as a thing that Constantine would do. And yeah, I'm into seeing where it's going to turn out. All in all, it's not a bad issue. It's just dense. It's a very dense read. So I think I'm just going to say a flat 7. It seems like a cop-out, but like I feel like I don't understand it well enough to justify giving it higher or lower. It's well made. I understood it. It's setting stuff up, but there is a deeper layer to it that I probably could look into once I'm done with this arc and see a lot more representations for. And that's it. That's all the comics that DC Comics put out this April 9th, 2014. And yes, I know it was a small one. I'm sure that you didn't get your fill, but here's the thing. As I said last episode, I'm going on vacation next week. So the moment I'm done recording, editing, and uploading this, I'm immediately going to start on next week's episode. Because I'm going to try to have that come out while I am completely removed not only from my computer, but from my country as a whole. So wish me luck, because this is the first time I've had to get ahead this hard. Anyway, let me talk about next week's comics real quick, just so I can point out a few things. Next week, we have 13 comics coming out. Hopefully I will get through all of them, and they are Batman, Batman and Robin, Batwoman, Birds of Prey, Harley Quinn, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Supergirl, Green Lantern New Guardians, Sinestro, Justice League, Wonder Woman, and Trinity of Sin Pandora, as well as Batman Eternal, which I think from this point on, I'm just going to call the weeklies. I may keep saying Batman Eternal until we get our second weekly, but our second weekly is literally starting at the end of this month, so it's not going to be that long. You may have noticed in there, I said Sinestro. That hasn't shown up before. What the hell's a Sinestro? Well, Sinestro is the new book. It is a brand new #1. We are getting our first issue of Sinestro there, as well as Justice League. And normally, for all of the ongoing books, the things that have been around since the beginning of the New 52, whatever month I'm in, this is month 30, whatever month I'm in, it's that issue number. This is Justice League 29, because Jeff Johns cannot keep a schedule. So just know that this is something that's going to be tying into Forever Evil probably. It's going to be set probably what should have been a month ago. I don't know how it's all going to fit in, but yeah, that's happening. Everything else in there I think is pretty straightforward. I don't think there's any sort of like event tie-ins or anything we need to know about. So yeah, wish me luck that I get there on time. But if you have any comments about any of the comics I talked about this week, last week, next week, anything at all, go ahead and hit me up down in the comments below. I will definitely check those out. Additionally, on any sort of social media that we may exist on, you can comment there. We got a Reddit, we got a Discord, we got a Patreon. All of those are available, maybe for a price. Really just the one for a price. But yeah, go ahead and check those out. But that's going to do it for me. Like I said, I got to jump right into next week's episode. So here's hoping that nothing huge and massive happens in DC news in the 1 week that I will not be up to date on that. But what are the odds of that happening? So yeah, thank you very much for watching, listening, and be sure to always remember that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.